Well, what an honor to be amongst these great minds. Really excited for what the next hour and a half holds. And I've got the great job of moderating this panel towards a bio-based industry. Um, Now, what does that? I guess what I want to explore today. What does bio-based industry actually mean? And I thought what I wanted to explore today is the transformative potential of the bioeconomy in reshaping industries through sustainable biology driven innovation. Now we've got leaders from academia, industry, policy, all to discuss the challenges and the opportunities in scaling bio-based solutions. Now I want to start with I guess the big ticket item, which is certainly what I thought first thought when I was asked to chair this panel, which is actually cultural change. And can we ever move towards a bio-based industry without huge amounts of cultural change? How do we build public trust in bio-based technologies? Because it all has to start from that. Um, So I guess that's a first question I'd like to throw out to Annika. Why don't we start with you?
But thank you. I'm really delighted to be here today. In my opinion, if we think about it, if our innovations are not supported by the public, then eventually the governments will not support them because they are elected by the public and they want to be re-elected. And that means that the funding dries up. So, how do we solve that? Well, I think the way that we can do that is to really think more about our technology pull instead of technology push. That means that we should be working much closer with our communities. When we are starting to develop a new type of product, why would a community want to actually take that innovation? Think about your first community, because obviously you want to scale globally, but potentially you want to work within one community first. Go to them and try and find out why would they accept this technology and what do they need to be able to accept it. For example, let's say you're designing a brand new type of biodegradable plastic bottle. But when you start to speak to the community, you understand that they actually cannot afford to actually pay for that kind of, new innovation. It's really important to see how you can then change the situation for them. So I think working hand in hand with your communities, even if it's a smaller community, and building out will really allow for you to take this to acceptance within the public.
Yes, I guess the cultural change is more than about it's just education, transparency, and also that that community that community engagement. I mean, can you are there is there something that you think would be easily adoptable and would make a big change right away?
We see that a lot more on the healthcare side. Obviously, if you're working with the patient, patient communities, we've heard a lot today about rare diseases as well. I think there your first acceptance could be obviously, parents, patients within the community that want to accept it, and then obviously from there you can scale. I think it's really working hand in hand and understanding what are the barriers to actually accepting these types of innovations. And the more these communities accept it, the more they will advocate, or, they'll be your advocates to say, this product is really working, we are using it. And then you're able to scale from there.
Thanks. Guess Gordon and Najee, you're at the I guess at the real sort of cutting edge of this, of actually getting the products out there. Have you encountered any resistance or um, to that sort of adoption of technology, Aji?
I think it's just in a broader context, right? It's about how do we communicate the best of the best in this technology, because there is a lot of stigma around, how these until people touch and feel, there will be always doubt about it, right? I think we're sometimes forget about the the greatest of these technologies. The simplest example is the mRNA vaccine, right? It didn't happen in 6 months. It happened to scale in 6 months. But there was 20 years of biotech research behind to, but the moment we had a crisis came in, we scaled that one and put into the billions of people's right body, and it worked amazingly. But those kind of examples, communicating and saving life, right? So coming back to a specific context of manners, it's again why we do. What is the purpose, right? That's purpose is the key there. One of the most uh, challenging societal problem is obesity and diabetes, right? Globally, almost 11 to 16% depends on the country is diabetic, and 11 to 15% is pre-diabetic. So global population 25% is in that arena of diabetes. More than 70% of Americans are obese, right? How do you reinvent your food to become more healthier? Means we are consuming more calories than what we needed, right? If you go back in 30 years ago, we were only consuming 1000 calories, 1500 calories. Now we are consuming almost 2 times, 3 times more calories than what we needed. What it enabled is the cost of calories. It's calories so cheaper. The food is cheap in that context, right? So how do we reinvent the food system? That's where we think about that purpose-driven biotechnology research to making natural sweetness to reduce the calorie content in food, right? So how do we communicate those kind of things to when you consume this one? And that need to be across. It's into the team who building it up, right? Why do they that? What is the purpose? At the same time, who is commercializing that team to be understood, and at the same time, the consumer as well. So you need to educate people across the spectrum and how this is going to transform your life. And when they started consuming it, it's again we we need to reinvent the taste, just like sugar as well. We can't just give them a different taste, then people won't accept it as well. So there are a lot of those things, but the resistance is around regulatory, getting through the global regulatory, because the regulatory landscape is not harmonized across the world. America is different than Europe is different, and Asian countries are different, Latin America is different, right? So that is the biggest challenge in terms of we are facing, getting this through product to become universalized, commoditized.
Gordon, I mean, you took the company public, right? So you will have had to deal with many of these questions. What was your kind of, how did you get past that and make people see, I guess, skip 10, 15 years into the future as to, what these technologies can accomplish?
Sure. I think to give a slightly different perspective, incumbents think they can dominate forever. And if you're a disruptor, and that's what we do, we created a new way of sequencing. I never go without one. And it's hard to convince somebody that that machine for $1,000 can do what the incumbent 95% market leader can do for $50,000. So you have this, there's the social acceptance, but as a disruptor, you just have a belief that you're going to make a product that everybody wants. As Steve Jobs said, they don't know what they want until you give it to them, right? We take that as a given. That's first base. And that's really hard, as has already been articulated. The next thing is you've got to convince the technology community. If you can't get past them, you never get. And in the case of point-of-care blood glucose testing, which is what I did for 15 years, we went out and said we can make a test that is as good as a clinical lab or home testing on a finger stick. And the pushback we got was phenomenal. And yet today, that is now emerged into the same technology out of Oxford, sold to the Americans for a pretty penny, usual story, right? Is an implantable, which lasts for 15 days and is radically transforming and helping with continuous monitoring that epidemic that we have in type 1 diabetes. But the incumbents, whether it's the patriarchal medical community or it's big companies, they're a real barrier. And I think even as we see technologies emerge, and this thing played a huge role in the pandemic. We sent 200 of these to Wuhan at the start of the pandemic. Over 70% of African COVID genomes were sequenced on this, over 2/3 in India. And I was in a meeting and there was the great and good in the developed economies. And somebody said, well, India is not capable. India is not capable. And I'm a CEO who's part Indian, of being able to interpret COVID genomes. We'll have them all sent to the Sanger Center. Because the central model in genomics is mainframe centralized, send it all to the experts, they'll take it from here. And so incumbency and aversion to technology, it's not necessarily the end user patient. And I'll give you one final example. Non-invasive prenatal testing for Down syndrome has been broadly adopted. If you don't want to know, you don't have to. But you cannot not let those who want to know whether they've got a child that might have Down syndrome to make a decision in the first trimester. And that has met with real prevention from the medical community, not from patients, not from parents who are very anxious. If that's a personal decision they should be allowed to have. And as we peer into the next 10 years, this confluence of synthetic biology, machine learning, AI, genomics, which is now 20 years old, we are going to face these challenges time and time again. And just because you get past the people who wanting it, you're really only at the foothills of the Himalayan challenges that will come. I will talk more optimistically later, but I just wanted to lay out the challenges first.
Well, do you know what? I think we just need to tackle those challenges head on. In all the, discussions we were having in the speakers room, it's about these. I mean, I see it. I'm a patent attorney. I was a pharmacologist here 20 years ago. I've now been a patent attorney for 20 years. So I see all the exciting stuff first. I mean, that's a real privilege in this job. You see it early on, and some of it, even I could use the example because he's now gone, but CEO of Helix, when I first started working with him and talking to him 7-8 years ago, I thought, AI, new uses for drugs. I'm a pharmacologist. I was like, it'll never do it. And now look, drugs in the clinic. So there's no shortage of great ideas, but it's translating those. I mean, that's sort of my, I'm not here to give you my personal opinions really, but the bottleneck is actually getting them commercialized. Actually, I'd like to perhaps bring you in now, CT, because you've had so much experience of this over the years. It's how do you get the great ideas, the next best things? What's the key to translating them?
Okay. Yeah, first I want to say that I'm very happy to be here. I'm actually an alumni of Jesus College, so very happy to be back.
I was keys, so
Which is yeah. So yeah, indeed, I think because I'm a researcher, and we like to solve problems, and I think this morning, one of the panelists was also saying, any research that we do, if we want to translate them, it has to be problem focused rather than solution focused. And what I meant is that many of us, like myself as a researcher, we have our favorite topic to work on. We develop the technology, we develop a solution, and then we start to knock on doors to see if there are certain problems that this solution can solve and help to solve. So what we should do, in fact, is not to develop a solution looking for a problem to solve, but to develop a solution that will solve a specific problem. So I think if we want to translate this, then we need to know what are some of the grand challenges that we're trying to address, some of the problems we're trying to solve, and then develop the solution together with the users. For example, I'm in the healthcare in the healthcare area. So we do work closely with the clinicians, understanding what are some of the clinical problems they encounter, and then work with them to develop solution. I think once we develop solution, then it's much easily adopted by the clinicians because they have a stake in it. They actually contributed towards developing that solution. But having said that, there's always this gap between uh, basic research outcome and then commercialization. Try to cross this so-called valley or death. And I think firstly, not only should we focus on the problem and coming up with the solution. I think right at the very early stage, we should also think about whether when we are designing, for example, or developing a technology, we should incorporate at the very early stage the ability to scale up production. And having said that, of course, I think I think maybe one of the good thing about being in Singapore is the government is very supportive of R&D, and they do provide that kind of what we call DGAP or GAP grants, which help us to move the technology from technology readiness level from 2 to 3 to 4, eventually to 5 to 6. I think that really help us to give us the resources for us to really to bridge that gap.
Guess you've hit on two key problems there, right? Money and people. I'm not quite sure which is the biggest one to tackle first, but Julie, just turn to you off when we talk about the talent and the gap in scaling bio-based industries. Do you see a way forward in tackling that?
Okay, maybe a step back. I think I need to explain to people what I do actually in the organization, because SG Innovate is quite unique. And everywhere I go around the world, people will tell me that SG Innovate is very unique in the sense that it is government owned, but we are a private entity. And we have two main parts in our organization. One is investing in capital, and the other is investing in humans, in people. So my role is anything that's non-monetary related. So if it's the deep tech startup, oh, and forgot to mention, we only work in emerging technologies. So 10 over years ago, we started investing in a lot of med tech stuff, digital tech stuff, but we've stopped doing that because there are private sector organizations and VCs that do that, and they are quite good at it. So that's where we look at problems where the private sector isn't really stepping up just yet. So these are cutting edge. Maybe the VC isn't so familiar in the area, less likely to invest in, but we think it's great potential. So the organization will come in to invest in terms of the capital, but also in terms of the people issues. You have talent that needs to be trained, it needs to be skilled into these nascent technologies. And for general public awareness, we talked about adoption, the community, excuse me, being accepting of this technology and its possibilities. And where I'm sitting, because I looked at many technologies, not just the med biotech side, for example, AI. I was talking to some of my friends, and 6, 7 years ago, like you said, no one would consider AI in biomedical, but look at it now. And recently, the Bio Working Committee in Singapore came to me and said that, hey, we have an issue. We don't have enough AI ML talent in this space. Then I said, hang on, hang on. And then their solution was, we need to train more AI ML people. And I said, wait, take a pause. Let's see what the data tells us. So data is very important, right? Before you make the wrong decisions. And I looked into the community because SGinnovate has the largest deep tech talent community. I can tell we have a few thousand, nearly 10,000 of people in AI and ML just registered with us, actually a little bit more. But when I cross-reference it against how many of them are in the biomedical space, less than 100 turned up. So then is it a question of awareness? Do these people not know that there are these opportunities out there? So that's why I think that, like what Tritek said, right? Having the understanding of this problem before you go straight into solutioning is important. Having that ecosystem community behind you is also important. We try not to do anything in silos. So I work with all the private sector and government agencies you can name in Singapore. And really, it's because we don't think it's about building, pipes that don't connect. We want to connect the entire ecosystem. And because Singapore is small enough, thankfully, it's fairly easy to just pick up a phone and call someone and say, hey, I'm doing this. Would you be interested? For example, we are doing something along fusion in the medical space. So we're crossing two types of technologies, cybersecurity and space. Yeah, so that's another two types of technologies. So that's why I think if you're a new entrepreneur, I would suggest you look into those areas where people aren't really looking at that possibility, where there's an overlap, and then seeing how that technology transcends into other domains, tech domains. And that's where I think that is that beauty in that synergy. Yeah, so that's my
Yeah, we had to decide on a policy of how many days a week we wanted people in the office, and I was quite unpopular to say that I wanted people in as much as possible. People have got used to working from home, and I give the example of just that. It's the excitement is in where the innovation and the clever stuff happens is in the crossover. So probably 80-90% of my work at the moment is the crossover between AI and life sciences, biology. The examples you gave with fusion's really interesting, but also the innovation. It happens at the coffee machine. Um, it
correct.
happens at the coffee machine, and that's why Google wanted all their employees in, and why Amazon wanted them in. It's the you know it, it it's standing and waiting for your coffee, and two people from completely different areas of the business get together to solve a problem. So it's really interesting to hear you say that. Um, uh, Ajay, I want to bring you in again because we were having a great conversation earlier about that. Little sort of, if you think about the bioeconomy as a whole, there's bits of it are bits of it are working, but it's not all yet joined up and working together. Um, Now you had some interesting views, which actually Aji will tie in with Julie's, about actually a lot of the problem being people, and finding the right people at the manufacturing end, and that infrastructure, and building that. And I wonder if you might give us your views on
Sure.
that.
So just pulling back, let me a little bit about Manus Bio so that people will get understand what I do, right? Manus, it's a bioalternatives company. So bioalternatives are the chemicals, materials, and ingredients which we use in our daily, everyday products, traditionally sourced from plants or animal agriculture or petrochemical derived. We are transitioning to a bio-based manufacturing for these kind of chemicals, materials, and ingredients. That is what we do, right? So the company founded in 2011 out of MIT, right? So you can see that one, that transition of technology happened that period of time, because 2005 we finished the Human Genome Project. Then engineers started coming to developing methodologies or processes to create, manipulating biology become to making things, the products, right? So you can make a cell factory to make your food ingredient, your flavor ingredient, your fragrance ingredient, your cosmetics product. So that cell factory kind of engineering is the foundation of this one, right? From there, last 10, 15 years, again, we were creating overall the industry spent almost $15 billion. The synthetic biology industry spent, all the companies altogether spent $15 billion investors' money into this space. But we have only commercialized a handful of products. Why? Right? I believe still we are into the early stage, because we only begin 2010 with the CRISPR, new gene editing technologies, really the power of manipulating at scale these things in a laboratory scale, right? Once we have these processes, the cell as a cell factory, you have another challenge coming to scaling into the commercial production, manufacturing scale. That scale up is another level of change. Then the third phase it is, once your product, you need to find out product market fit and developing the market for that product. So there are three phases in this technology development, and each phase is a unique manpower challenges. It's not the same laboratory, cell engineering, biology, or the engineers are not the one who scaling this, doing the scale up of these molecules or the manufacturing process. And they are not the one who daily basis practicing in a factory to make this product out of it. So you have to develop, and looking back at the challenges, we at Manus, what we have done differently is that one, everyone thought that, okay, this is like a biopharmaceutical industry. We can just go to some OEM contract manufacturer, you can manufacture products. So that's where the gap happened, because no one understood that this is new innovation need to happen in the scale, developing that, scaling this technology as well. What we have done differently, 2018, nobody want to manufacture things in America. That time was, it's not like a post-COVID, pre-COVID, there are two different world exist in the manufacturing context, right? So we were, because we were chemical engineers, we came out of MIT chemical engineering, we wanted to make things, that is practicing things is very important for us. We went and bought a factory in rural America, it's Augusta, Georgia, and started, it's one of the largest biomanufacturing complex in America. The company was originally owned by Monsanto. They used to make the molecule called aspartame, which is the diet Coke sweetener, right? So the factory was shut down, hundreds of people lost job. That the entire manufacturing 6,000 metric ton of this product moved back into China. So we went and bought that factory and trying to started to recommissioning, where I myself moved from Boston, having a good life, to moving into rural America, moving family there, and started working in factory. Only we realized that we don't have a talent to work in the factories anymore, because last 30 years we have been shutting down the factories. We were not creating new talents, right? But still we had to go back and bring back almost 30, 40 employees who knows how to run, because I don't know, I see some big pipes and 600,000 liter tank. Right. Our largest fermenter is a 600,000 liter fermenter. So we have to bring back to that people and train the next generation of people who can, the engineers working hand in hand with the plant operators. They are not the engineers, they are high school educated people. But we got a real life opportunity to go to that community, work with them, and really rebuilding the talent to scaling the technology, and right now, continuously running that factory to make the product. So the complexity is way more than what you think. A lot of things we can do with lab, as roughly said, but Lim said, but can we scale it? Right? That is the biggest challenge. That's where you all need to think about it, taking that bold decision, not not be afraid of going to that. If you are innovating, you need to have that passion and drive towards taking to the scale, to the end, right? Seeing through that one. Often people think that, okay, I can give to someone else. No, other person is not going to solve the problem. That's the lesson I learned. It is expensive, right? We spend hundreds of $1,000,000 into that factory to bring them back into life. But now if you go, for me, you go to any grocery shop or any supermarket in America, at least 10 to 20 products which you can pick up, which integrated our product from the Fortune 500 brands. That's real. Seeing that from starting from a research lab to taking all those through is a real rewarding moment for me in many ways, and all my colleagues as well, because several of us still there. We founded the company, we still work at the place and move across the different divisions and learn each and things, because I never know how the quality regulatory framework works in this space as well. There are a lot of hoops to get to commercialize a technology. And for me, adding on that one, I was telling the same with you as well, right? I wish I could go to the school right now. This is the most exciting time. This is the most exciting time. The convergence of AI and biology, and going back, learning all algebra and math, and taking that one, right, combining to exploring. Biology is so complex, so it's a complex problem to solve. That's exciting thing in front of you, right? And you guys are going to transform the way people live, the society lives. This happened before. This is nothing new, right? 1920s to 1960s were the chemical emergence of the chemical technology. Everything you use now come from that chemical-based manufacturing processes. Now we are talking about the biology as a manufacturing process, right? Transitioning to that life. So as students, it's the most exciting time. The future on your hand.
Yeah, it's we talked about it in the context of I've spent a lot of my career doing pharma. Um, and I mean, AI has had a huge impact there, but the huge leaps have happened in the past 10 years. But when it comes to synthetic biology, the leaps are only happening now, right? What do you think, Gordon? You looked as if I was like, you want to say something?
No. I was concentrating on what you were going to ask. Yeah, I think there is. I think you're right. I am quite jealous as well. This is kind of going to be a golden age of biology, and scale up is really important, and you need the people to do the scale up, as Ajay is clearly articulated. But what we chose to do something different, because when you look at the valley of death, a lot of technologies fail because they can't scale.
Yeah.
So we decided to scale first, and it's quite difficult when you're trying to explain to an investor to give you £50 million to build a factory for single molecule analysis of stuff that we haven't really decided on what we're going to do. So it's quite hard to write a business model around that. Try explaining to somebody this could be as ubiquitous as a telescope or a microscope just doesn't cut it. But we picked DNA RNA sequencing, which is really hard to do, and said we need to build a factory to scale it. And 98% of the work to scale the electronics, this is a convergence of cell biology, single molecule, chemistry, membranes, and then like cutting edge, so hi-fi silicon fab, all converged together. And that's what goes into the scaling of that platform. So we raised the money, so we're going to work on DNA, RNA. We spent about 1% on that. We spent 99% of our money on making the platform work. Because if it wasn't going to work for DNA, RNA, because it was too hard, we could look at small molecules, metabolites, antibodies, proteins. There was just so many things you could do. And I quickly figured out scaling the platform was the most important thing we could do. So we built a factory in 2016 and opened it in 2017. And like 80% of it was fallow. Fast forward to today, and our revenues then were 2 million. In our 200 million. Factory's almost completely full, but we're only doing one shift a day, so we've got lots more headroom now. And because we built that scalability, it meant that once we had the breakthrough, we could move quickly. And in terms of the people needed for that, Harwell, and the same here, so it's not an Oxford thing, I'm not being competitive, right? But in Harwell, they had this hi-fi, high fidelity capability. And it's the same around here, right? You've got hotspots with these amazing people, and they can be brought to bear to do anything, so long as there is a common, clear understanding of what scaling looks like. I think people get too knotted up in thinking they can't scale.
Yeah.
You have to solve the problem of scaling, otherwise, and the disruptive commercial model, and make the thing work. Too much time is spent on trying to make it work, and then 10 years pass, and by which time the technology is starting to not be viable. You've got to do it the other way around, and if you do, you can't lose. And you've also got these people who invested a lot of money. They can't afford to get out as well, so you've ensnared them. So that helps as well. But we created our own interdisciplinary workforce.
That's one way to do it. Create your own. Annika, I'd like to bring you in and get your thoughts on sort of advice for that scaling in this sort of because I guess as chief strategy officer, you need to start thinking about that early, right?
Yeah, so I think when at the moment we really are styling it as they say, the start of the wave. So we're starting to. Oh, sorry. convergence of technology starting to happen. So obviously we're looking at the biology side, we're speaking about AI, but we're also going to see robotics with omnicompute, next generation energy, quantum, advanced materials, and spatial intelligence, and each of these, we're innovating in each of our spaces. But as each of them innovates, they are actually fueling the next technology. So when we can crack next generation energy, then of course we're going to be able to, you know, do everything much faster, go much further. If we're able to solve, for example, with regards to data, DNA storage, instead of using cloud, there's so much that we can still do. So I think when we're thinking about scaling, we also need to look at the adjacent industries and what they are doing. So robotics can seriously help you within your factories. So could, any of these other technologies. So I think if you are in the innovation space, it's worth watching what's happening in the others as well, and seeing where you can draw in their next innovations to speed up yours, because that really is the convergence of these technologies going forward. And I read a great book, which was The Coming Wave by Mustafa Suleiman. I can really recommend it if you're interested to see how everything starts to converge and go forward. But as a chief strategy officer, I'm always thinking about, what are the next 5 years? Where do we need to go and how do we need to get there? And the more you see what's happening in other industries, you're going to be able to speed up yours. And I think that is really going to be the definition of the next few years, is going to be the pace of innovation. We've always been innovating, but now that pace is really changing. And we're innovating in multiple industries at the same time that can influence us. So I think that's the way forward.
Thank you. And we've talked a lot about scaling. I want to move. I'm going to move to the other end, largely from a selfish point of view, because it's the end that I'm mostly involved in as a IP attorney working with startups. Which, of course, to get to the problem of scaling, you've got to have those initial ideas, and then we've talked, of course, CT, about the problems of commercializing it. Now, the problems, I guess maybe I'm getting a snapshot of the market, but raising money. All my clients are always trying to raise money for that initial ideas, get someone to buy in and get that initial backer, I guess. Now, I'm not going to direct this at anyone specific, because I actually I want to hear all your views on it. Advice to someone trying to, raising money is easy if you've got some money, right? But it's, I see it a lot with patents, right? It's a bit of the chicken and the egg. You need some money to file a patent, but you need a patent to raise investment. What advice do you have to people starting out and trying to get backing for the ideas at the early stage?
Maybe I can start. Okay, totally, maybe not so related, but SG Innovate is in the unique position now of getting our next 5 years of funding. So I was just telling some of you guys, right? I'm writing a paper for about $100 million, and it's proving more difficult than anything. You would think that after 10 years of being around, SG Innovate will have proven itself. Government would totally support us, easy peasy. It's just a blank check. But no, because there are so many competing organizations, good causes that the government want to invest in, different parts of the RIE, research, innovation, and entrepreneurship landscape. We need to prove ourselves another day. And before we got to this point, what I did was one step back, was to talk to all my different stakeholders. We talked about the different pipes not being connected. But worse yet, because the circumferences are different, even when you do connect them, there's a lot of leakage along the way. And it's always good for your stakeholder, which is in my case is the government, Ministry of Finance, that you can show them exactly how all these pipes connect. In terms of the startup, when you're pitching your idea, where does it fit in the greater scheme of things? How does it fit with adjacent technologies? Is it something that can be deployed somewhere else? So I think as young people, you guys, as you're doing your innovation, you need to think, I guess, take a little bit step back and think much bigger picture. How does that mean, in terms of success in the future, in 5 years, in 10 years? What does your technology look like? Who's going to be your user? And beyond your initial user, who's going to then follow on investing in you? So I think having that clarity sometimes does help. Life is complicated, like guys, and there's going many things going to be thrown at you, many curveballs. You just have to roll with the punches, really, and be yes, exactly, and be nimble. And when you hit a brick wall, step back. What exactly went wrong? What can you do differently? Can you get people on board your, pipe dream and get them to see it from your point of view? I think understanding the different possibilities out there, the different approaches, talking to the right people, the right investors, the right government folks, very handy, very useful. Do your research. Don't just hit any VC. Find out exactly, right? What is the VC interested in investing? I think that would be, yeah.
It's funny, I've noticed that. I was speaking to, I think it was Mike at maybe Cambridge Innovation Capital, and they were saying we have PR people now. We're competing, actually, for the good ideas. That was nice to hear, because so often you sort of think, well, it's, the money's not there, but I think it is for the good ideas. I'm very eager to hear other people's views on this, because I know that's going to be at the forefront of people's mind.
Yeah. Well, perhaps I can share my point of view as an academic entrepreneur. I think one of the advantage of being in the university is that, firstly, when we file patents, we need to pay for it. The university will pay for it. We have a technology transfer office that does that. But having said that, they will not file any patent or any IP that you submit. They want to have a clear plan of commercialization. So I think, that's one part of it. The other part is that I think being a researcher in the university, I try not to start a company so quickly. I will make use of the advantage that I can actually apply for research funding to build my technology to a level and build the value to a significant level before I actually go out to raise money. I think that is one advantage. I think the other thing is also, maybe in Singapore it's much easier because there are grants that allow us, and the translational grants that allow us to further build our technology to a level which is ready to be commercialized. So my advice, I think to some of you who are really in the university or as a researcher, tap on some of this funding to really bring your technology, the TRL level to a higher level, and then build the value, and then eventually, once you go out to teach that, I think the VCs will, hopefully the investors will appreciate that what that currency is going to bring to them. I think and also, I myself has started 6 companies, and one of them actually IPO in 2018. But the journey is not easy, and really we are not on many doors. But it's good to also understand what the interest of the investors. Not all of them will, for example, fund early stage. Some will do, and also what kind of area they're interested in. Having understanding of the kind of investor we're going to talk to will also help.
Ajay and Gordon, the two CEOs on the panel. I guess you're no stranger to knocking on doors and being turned away and asking for money. And you're
Okay.
well, you're still here and have survived to tell the tale. Any advice?
It's for me, the fundamental thing is, what problem are you solving?
Yes. I think I ask people the same, and they want to file a patent application, by the way. So
Focus on the problem, right? Then what solutions you can create, and that is backed up with your technology, right? Then that's backed by your science, your IP. Your IP is a piece of paper if you cannot practice it, right? So that is that. So you have to think in a layer: the problem, solution, and technology. Then the science backing it up, right? What science is backing it up to have that technology platform. And the second thing is simplifying your technology to as a solution to that problem, right? So I just want to, because I got out of the school, I was doing research in other part of the Cambridge, right? the other side of the Cambridge,
Yeah, yeah.
in Boston,
The Cambridge other side of the pond.
yeah, the other of the world, right? So got out of the school, I wanted to be a professor, but I was just looking into the business school, spending time with learning about what is entrepreneurship, what it works, and things like that. Right? I randomly met somebody, right? One investor. He was just sold his for one company, and he was just hanging out, talking to the people. So when I told him that, oh, this is what I want to do with, I'm thinking about starting a company. He brought his 7-year-old kid and asked me to explain what I want to do it. It took almost 30 minutes for me to figure it out, how to explain to that kid. Then he asked that kid, did you understand what he said? And then he asked him. So that simple language, figuring out how to explain the power of your technology to a 10-year-old kid. It's a cliche thing, but that is very critical, right? That communication skill, right? You have to build that one. So it takes a lot of time. It's a lot of iteration, a lot of practices to do those kind of things. It was really shocking for me. From there, so far we raised $400 million, right? Over the last 14 years, right? It took 14 years for us to where we are now. But that was the beginning. So focus on your problem and why you, right? That's the second thing people are looking for. It's no lack of capital. Capital is there because everybody want to. A lot of rich people want to make 10x to 40x to 100x their money. That is their goal. That capital is there, but it's up to you why they should give you money, right? So one is the problem and why you. So if you can tell that story very well in a compelling, and also when you take someone's money, you have to be committed to return the capital as well. That's the thing, right? It is not short term. You have to put your life behind at least 5 to 10 years, minimum of decade, minimum. It depends on the life cycle of your technology. Certain technologies you need to spend your entire career. That's where I am living on that one now. So these are the basic fundamentals of pitching ideas and raising money and building that relationship, because it's all about nobody is investing into technology, investing into people. It's a team. And do you have a team, right? Bringing that right team surrounded with you is critical, right? So 5, 6 of the team came with me from MIT. Still there at the company. They're doing different type of jobs now, right? So that core team is still with the technology because that passion and purpose and drive still with them to make it happen.
Wow. Well, Gordon, have you ever tried to explain nanopore technology to a 10-year-old?
No, I haven't. But assuming you can get your ideas over, because that's just the start, right? Once you can explain it to your grandmother or your mother-in-law, in my case, then you're on your way, right? But I think I have some rules that you should follow. And the first rule is ignore all the financial rules out there. So I refuse to take any VC money because I said it would take 7 years to make this technology work. And then I said I wanted all my shares to be ordinary. So if you could, you can have these pernicious shares, which are basically typically the VCs. And if there are any VCs in the room, I think you do a wonderful job for a certain type of company. We're a deep tech company. It took us 10 years to make a product, 10 years to establish it in the market. People say that's a really long time. Not if the technology is around in 100 years' time, it's not. It's a really small amount of time. We raised £800 million between 2005 and 2020. And we raise small amounts regularly, all vanilla. So don't let any investors on your board. They're there to give you money. You're there to innovate. And if they can't do their job, give you money, you do your job. I mean, you don't try and do their job. I mean, I'd said to one investor, great, do I get to go on your board as well? And tell you who to...
You can tell me private. I'd love to know more.
Oh, yeah. The Republic is very bad. And then we've raised money as a London company, Oxford company, UK company, is what I mean by that. It's really hard to find money, always. But there are seams of money that if your idea is big enough, disruptive enough, game-changing enough, you will find those seams of capital. And that capital, and in 2005, it wasn't even called patient capital. But we found hedge funds who'd done phenomenally well betting against the dot-com boom. And they had deep pockets, big ambitions. And so at the end of that 800, and you touched on the different types of capital. Startup is different to scale up. It's different to PLC. We raised another 400 million privately in that 15 years to refresh the earlier people. So we always took them out, and you could take them out because all the shares were vanilla. So you're just swapping like for like. You haven't got this guy over here. His shares are worth 10 times the later stage guys. So I didn't know any of this when I started it, but it worked so brilliantly. And then in 21, we IPO'd and raised another 500 million. And that was a calculated risk because it was clear it was a life sciences froth and not a champagne boom because of the pandemic and the life sciences impact. But that hangover was always going to come. I never knew it was going to be this deep. And it's still, it doesn't matter how many headache tablets you take, the hanger's just not going away. In the most bearish market. But we raised 500 million, and I wouldn't, in the last couple of years, been out there raising money. It would be difficult. But if your idea is big enough, ambitious enough, disruptive enough, you will find plenty of money. But you've got to do it on your own terms. That's so important. It's not just enough to have a great shareholder. In fact, the best shareholders are probably not the greatest because they think they can do your job for you. And if there's one thing you take away from this, you keep in control of your own destiny, of your own company.
Can I just add though, if you don't mind? Yeah. So, I mean, I agree with you to some point. The fact that it depends on the type of VC we're talking about, I think. SG Innovate was purposefully created because we are in areas where the private VCs won't come in. To give you an example, in Singapore, when we started investing in quantum, the organization was the only one that was investing in quantum tech. Nobody else was. Of the 10 quantum companies 7 years ago, SG Innovate invested, I think, in 8 of them, 8 out of 10. So that's why I think you must know who you're talking to on the other side of the table. I don't think any of my investors feel they can run the company. More likely, they're there to provide that support. But I also like to say that as the founders, you also need to be humble and listen when people are giving you sound advice. You don't always have to say yes, but at least keep an open mind and not just immediately say no. I think one has to be logical and then to see it from that perspective rather than an emotional perspective. Because I work with a lot of founders.
Sure.
And some of them are highly emotional people and they will not take any advice.
On that point, I agree. I'm talking about 15 years ago, right? The place has evolved, and I'm going to be stepping down as CEO of Oxford Nanopore next year. So I'll come and see you for some money.
We just set up in Singapore. I'll be more than happy. We'll do lunch.
Yeah.
You're on. I'm paid.
You had more money than me.
Do you know what? I could keep this going for a long time, but I want to bring in, is now about good time, I want to bring in some questions from the audience. I think there'll be a lot. Is somebody going to moderate the questions for me rather than like I can just go from sort of left to right?
Thank you so much for the session. Very inspiring and so much to take home. I'm Isaac from Nigeria. I'm back in Nigeria. I'm a medical student completing medical school next month. I did a bit of VC and consulting work while in medical school. I'm trying to formalize that after medical school. I also did a bit of policy work with the Clinton Health Access Initiative as an intern at some point in medical school. And you talked a lot about government support. And I was wondering how Nigeria could learn from supportive policies that help deep tech, biotechnology, health technology scale. Because back in Nigeria, this industry is still, it's just starting to take off. a lot of policies are being developed that are transforming the industry. There's an health insurance policy that was just released earlier this year that we really hope that is going to change the way healthcare is being delivered. And I see the way things are being done in other countries since I started talking to people like about 48 hours ago. I was wondering how your countries, Singapore, India, went from being underdeveloped to now being so fast growing. And long term, I want to work with the government, and I think these insights will help me. Thank you.
That's a super question. BCT, if you want to take it first, Singapore, and then
See, this is why Tritek gets away with it. Well, okay, maybe because I'm from government, all my life career civil servant. I would say that we started from a place where we had nothing. As you know, Singapore has no natural resources, zero. The only thing that we have are human beings, and they weren't that educated at the start. So yeah, so that's where I think there's a lot of government policy around the vision of what we want to create as a country. We managed to get buy-in from the communities. We got people, to talk to each other. And a lot of things at this point in time is still very government-centric in the sense that we kind of push a lot of these new technologies. About 12, 13 years ago, when the term startup was very new in Singapore, I remember every day there was a news article being published in the Straits Times. That's our main newspaper, and the Chinese version to talk about it, about startups, to educate the general public. There was even a TV series on it, 20-parter. Yeah, and it was quite interesting because my mother called me up and she was like, "What the hell is this startup that they keep talking about?" So I had to explain to my mom what a startup was and whatnot. And I think that it is a whole of Singapore approach. I wouldn't even say whole of government because we got many associations into this. The universities played a very big part. If you know A-Star, the Agency for Science and Technology, they were also, big push in all things startups. So 10 over years, we started with something very simple, things along what you call fintech now, because Singapore has always been a financial center. So that was something people understood banking. And after that, we moved on to digitech. And now we're tackling a lot harder technologies, emerging technologies like fusion, cybersecurity, and whatnot, right? And space, rather. So I think that's something that we do fairly well in. When we've got our mind on something, we kind of all go in and see how everybody plays a part. And that's because from a survival need. Because like I said, right, we have no natural resources. It is part of our survival DNA. And that's the way it is. So cultures, and we'll talk about cultures at the beginning, it really depends on where you are, right? You make do with what you have, you take the best out of what you have, and then you work with it. Yeah, whatever resources that's within your grasp. You take one.
Yeah, I can add. So I literally grew up with Singapore actually, and I must say, I mean, my first startup that I created was in 2001. That's almost like 24 years ago. And at the time, there weren't any support at all. Yeah, so I mean, the reason why I want to go to set up a company because I'm very keen to see how I can bring my research outcome from the lab to the market, to the industry. It wasn't really about making money. I just want to see, want to see something that I do in the lab being used. And at the time, there weren't really any support at all, but I literally made a lot of mistakes along the way, encountered many failures. But at the same time, getting to know a lot of people and build my own network, and it becomes easier the next 5 startups. But I think it's only in recent years that the government is starting to put a lot of, or giving a lot of funding and support for startups. But I sometimes felt that maybe it's too much of a hand holding because I found that there are a lot of startups in Singapore. They are what we call zombie companies. They survive, but they don't really move forward. So because Singapore is a very small country, so whenever I create my own startup, I know my market is out there. It's not in Singapore. Singapore is a great place to do test bidding for my technology, but my market is in other parts of Asia, in Europe, in the US, or in America. Yeah, so sometimes it's too much of hand-holding as well. So many of times I would tell my students or postdocs who wants to do startups, because it seems to be the flavor of the month. Everyone wants to do it, to be careful and to really think carefully why they want to do this. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with CT. There's a bit too much hand holding.
Got it.
Yeah.
No, our questioner also asked about India, so I'd just like to, if Ajay, we were talking about that earlier, if you want to answer from that perspective before we move on.
Yeah, I think in a biotech, health tech, right now, I think it is look, every country is creating their own policies, right? In India, I recently see that they call it Bio-E3 policy, biotechnology for economy, environment, and employment. That's what they call. It is a 360 program around every facet of biology as a technology going to touch, from agriculture to right to the defense technology, right? So in between, creating the right policy is critical, and communicating that. You need to have some kind of similar kind of things to communicate to general public. As earlier she said, the next election they all they vote, right? If you don't communicate that effectively, you don't get the public support. If you don't have public support, you're not going to have a backed up with the public policy to investing into this kind of stuff, right? So I think that's happening in India right now. The Bio-3 policy announced a couple of years, 2 years ago, right? So and they're doing good job in communicating now. What I would say.
Thank you. I'll move to the other side of the room. Lady there.
Thank you for giving it a great talk on the discussion. So you guys talk about having a problem and then finding a solution. So I guess for me, I'm a medical student at UCLA and I'm a part of a biodesign program where they bring a lot of business, engineering, PhD, and medical student together. And I notice a lot of PhD, they have a solution before a problem. And then they come to this program asking, hey, what can I do with this solution? So I guess the question to you guys, if you have any thoughts in addition to what you share, if you have a solution before a problem, what now? What can you do about it? And are there some ways that you can, prevent this from happening, perhaps if they're in the earlier stage of their PhD career?
Is that a problem?
So the whole that's a good problem.
I mean, but when we single molecule sensing, it's basically principles of electrophysiology. You could make a membrane for about 15 minutes. You could put a molecule in, measure it for 5 minutes, get some results out, publish a paper. 3 of those, PhD, done. Trying to turn that into a product that could be used, and like talking about Singapore, University of Singapore are the first to adopt MinION as a next generation genomic workflow. That's why they're going to win. To answer your question there, right? You got to look at the frontier technologies and adopt them into the teaching system early. Nobody thought single molecule sensing would ever be a ubiquitous sensing technology, which it is. It's taught in all high schools now. So it's not always a bad thing that a blue sky technology, the blood glucose thing came about because somebody was trying to make fuel cells. And they were using enzymes and electrodes. And they were trying to bring the two together, and they used a mediator molecule, which was an ion complex, which turned out to be absolutely brilliant for measuring blood glucose in bioelectronic systems. So, and the whole of science is riddled with, you're solving a problem, you come up with a solution, it doesn't actually work over there, but it works over there. I do think that there is a balance, but I think we're becoming overly problem solving. Sometimes just green skunk works, as we call it, 20% of all R&D budgets are allowed to just be freeform.
Can I add to that? So I think there's really space, as you've said, for the blue sky research, particularly because in industry, I mean, you're catering for 20% there, but generally, industry cannot do blue sky research. We simply cannot afford to do it. We have a responsibility to make sure that our companies thrive for our shareholders, stakeholders, employees. And so that blue sky research just does not happen in industry. So there is a very specific place in research and in academia where we have the opportunity to really do that. And so I think it should not be discouraged in any way.
I mean, just now,
Yeah,
go ahead. Yeah, I was talking about just now, about solutions, looking for a problem to solve. I think sometimes that may work, of course, because right now, I'm running the Institute for Health Innovation and Technology at the university, and we do talk to clinicians to understand what the problems are, or sometimes they come to us with a problem, and then when we work with them, it's much easier for the solution to be adopted. Once you successfully develop the solution. Having said that, and like for example, I mentioned one of my staff when IPO, that technology we developed actually without any intention to commercialize at all. No, but we developed the chip, and it was it's a cancer bio chip anyway. And so investor came along and saw it, and saw the potential of it, and then they decided to fund and help us start a company and fund the company. So sometimes they may work. Just that the chance of getting it adopted will be higher if you are, solving a specific problem and come up with the solutions.
Yeah, I think in summary, there's just no right answer to that one.
Yeah,
Because there
I say perhaps not quite the answer you were expecting, but actually, we do need, sometimes we need to flip it around. And if we're always looking for answers to problems, we might miss a solution that is just crying out for a problem.
Look,
That-
for
that makes
for
sense.
doing PhD, it's a learning process, right?
Yeah.
Really, you're learning fundamentals of science at certain level, and learning to practice it as well. So, from my own experience, when I was doing research, I was not thinking about transitioning into bio-based manufacturing. What I was looking for, fundamentally, what is the regulation in a bacteria to make a class of chemicals, right? Why the bacteria regulated when you try to engineer the cell? Then we identified the regulatory mechanism in a bacterial cell. That opened up the intellectual property around transforming that cell as a cell factory to make so many chemicals we use in our life. So go, right now in front of you, physics, math, biology combining together. Go back into the fundamentals of science, create breakthroughs around it. Right? That's where you can combine these three things, learn the fundamentals of that one, and transitioning to looking into fundamental discoveries is going to change.
Great piece of advice. Shall we? I'll go back and forward to the room. Yes, please. And I don't have my glasses on, by the way, so if you're waving at me and I'm not.
Thank you very much for the talk. Was amazing and insightful. I have a question for Dr. Shangara about Oxford Nanobot Technologies. Has shown how innovation in DNA and RNA sequencing can reshape entire sectors, and that given this technology has already been used in globally, even in the space, what do you think is the next frontier or step to increase its impact?
Wow, that's a big question. I think 10 years to make it, 10 years in the marketplace. I think we're on the cusp of establishing ourselves in and moving, because there are many valleys of death, right? Can you get money? Can you make it work? Can you scale it? If you made something anybody actually wants, i.e., can you sell it? So we're through those 5 valleys. We're in number 6. I think there's probably 7 altogether. Can you take it into mainstream? So with direct RNA, you'll hear some amazing announcements from RNA vaccine manufacturers in the clinical space, because we can do methylation directly, free cancer diagnosis. So there's a whole slew of publications, 18,000 publications. So when you think about your new emerging tech, that's one way to get it established, by handing out free minines and getting people to publish. And that has 18,000 publications and now turning into commercially relevant products, which are going to show that global step change. And we're going to go after Illumina. It's only a $20 billion company with $4 billion in revenues, and it dominates globally. I think we can disrupt them, and we will. Kodak was disrupted by digital. Digital was disrupted by cameras, and so it goes. Let the fun begin.
Fun begin. Love it. Right. I don't think I've been at any questions here. Yes, at the very back, sir. So there's two of you in the middle.
Thank you for the great talk. This is Noor. I'm a data scientist, AI engineer, and working currently on a health tech project. So I was just wondering, from a fundraising perspective, what is the best approach to, start do fundraising? Basically, like working on the MVP, pre-seeding. So they tell you in this business, boot camps that, you need to board the plane as you're building it, and you need to sort of sell before you even have a product. And I know it's not a one size fits all. So I just was curious about your experience doing fundraising. Do you want to do the project validation, run the idea through the stakeholders, and try and get funding and build the prototype or the MVP, or vice versa?
Well, do you know what? I think it's probably most unusual for the moderator to try and answer, but to give my perspective on it, just because that's what I see day in, day out, is it's and I mentor in these accelerator courses. I actually mentor KQ Labs, for example. I suggest if you've got something in AI and health tech, you contact them. There are people far better than me. There are people that can actually help you, give you the advice, connect you with the right people. The network is so important. I mean, I'm well aware I'm on a panel with people that have actually done it, but perhaps TT
Yeah.
Gordon.
Yeah, because I'm from university, so as I said just now, that I won't be in a hurry to try to raise money if I can have access to research grants, because they are free and they're not going to eat into your equity. So
Where's people?
like it's yeah.
So, but no, I would caution against that.
No, but I think university actually owns the IP anyway. We have to license it. It's just that if I want to start a company, because if I raise money now, right, in an very, very early stage, then I'll be using the money to create MVP and so on, a prototype, which is very taxing on the startup, because I've keep raising money, in the next round. So I mean, being in the university, there's advantage of tapping on some of the available research grants that help us to do this translation or this prototyping and MVP before I actually go and raise money eventually. I mean, that's my reason why I want to do this.
I totally agree, right? You imagine you're going to someone like this product and at least a MVP and touching their life, right? Showing them that that's where you get more traction in terms of fundraising. Again, since you made the comment, I come from a different world of Boston, right? There we think about not how much equity you keep, how create value, right? It's a different mindset, right? It's not about how much I own in the company, rather than what is the valuation we can create, value we can create. Just take the Moderna as an example, right? You struggle 20 years when it comes to fusion. The founders only own 1%, 1.5%, maybe 2%, but it's 100 to 200 billion dollar value market cap, right? That's how, again, it's not just, it's striking the right balance in that sense, right? To make sure that, again, you need the right supporting investors around it with you. Don't take money in a hurry. Find out the right investor with the right mindset. Why? And again, the question you have to ask them: why are you investing in me? Why? right? Why are you investing in this space? They need to have a story as well, right? They need to have a mandate and story. It's not just going around taking money from everyone doesn't help you as well. But on the other hand, don't be just obsessed about your own, because scientists are always, oh, it's my own technology. They're so much obsessed about that as well. Early stage, I agree, but as in time comes, it's about you to what is value you're creating.
Did the nanopore technology come from the university, or did you?
It did. It was spun out of
Yeah.
Oxford, but I didn't write a business plan for 15 years.
Right.
So that's one way of doing it. The thing is, if you don't need a business plan. You don't need to say, I'm going to sell like this. If you've got a vision and you can convince the person sitting on the other side of the table that your vision could be disruptive, so it does have to be past the 10-year-old test, right?
Yep.
Right? Then you can raise money, and you need some seed so that you can independently generate the data that allows you to then build the market plan. I'm not saying you shouldn't have all these things, right? I just didn't really share them with people. That was not what we were selling. We were selling a disruptive vision. And if you really wanted to look at the numbers, we said, well, we'll see you in 5 years' time. We're looking for people who believe we're going to make this work for us. And so it's not that they're not right. And oh my God, I got business plans coming out of my ears since we became a public limited company, crawled over by analysts on a daily basis. So it just evolves. But at the beginning, share your vision, find somebody who wants to partner with you, as they says, across the table, and do it that way. It's not cookie cutter. If it was right, we'd all be billionaires in this room. And I certainly am not.
And seek out the support. Email me and
Definitely,
connect you with some people. Do we have time for one more? I've got the no. Well, it was a fantastic question to finish on anyway. That just leaves me to thank everyone. So, I mean, I've really enjoyed this. So I hope you've all found it useful, and it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.